Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today is part 3 of our 2023 KaffeBox Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Ranking Series. And a reminder on how this series works is that the winner of this video will go on to face the winners from videos featuring coffees 1 through 6, 7 through 12, and 19 through 24 to determine our favorite coffee from the entirety of the 2023 KaffeBox Advent Calendar. So let's go ahead and introduce the coffees that will be featured in today's video. Beginning with day 13, which is the Chevas Geisha 58 WX, a wash-processed Panama from Coffea Circulor out of Gothenburg, Sweden. Day 14, we have the El Encanto, a wash-processed Colombia from Langøra Kaffe, based out of Stjørdal, Norway. Day 15, we have the Manuel Vallecillo, a wash-processed Honduras from Swerl Coffee, based out of Falkenberg, Sweden. Day 16, we have the Karinga, washed Kenya, from Tim Wendleboe, based out of Oslo, Norway. Day 17, we have the Romerillo, a wash-processed Peru from Jacu out of Alsund, Norway. And day 18, we have the Ouroboro NSX, a natural slow-dried cherry-processed Kenya from Coffea Circulor, once again out of Gothenburg, Sweden. So let's go ahead and move the containers out of the way for the time being. And as always, none of these cups are labeled anywhere except on the bottom. We just like to shuffle them around for good measure as it gives us an opportunity to discuss what we have on our hands here today. And this is the most stacked lineup we've had in this series up to this point, as this features all but one wash-processed coffee. And even the one non-washed coffee is a coffee that could potentially not only win this video, but the entire series, as it is a natural processed Kenyan coffee from Coffea Circulor. And anybody that's had one of their natural processed Kenyan coffees knows that they tend to be some of the most unique, wild, and out there coffees. So that's not necessarily precluding it from winning this video. In addition to that, we have a couple of geishas, one Peruvian geisha, and then probably the biggest favorites to win the entire series, which is that washed Panamanian geisha from Coffea Circulor. As a lot of people know, that Panamanian geishas are my favorite coffee in the entire world, and it comes from one of my favorite coffee roasters in the entire world, so it definitely stands a chance to be the winner from this entire series. We're going to be ranking them as my favorite over here, my least favorite over here. We'll move these two out of the way. And we will go ahead and get started with this cup right here. Cup number 1. Wouldn't my luck have me pick out the one natural processed coffee from the very first try? As this one right here is that Kenyan coffee from Coffea Circulor. I'm very confident of it. It's got some wildly sugar aspects to it, and I'm not entirely sure that there's any other coffee other than one of Coffea Circulor's natural processed Kenyan coffees that could replicate a flavor like this. This one is intensely sweet. It's offering still tremendous clarity, so at first I'm like, it could, and then I immediately said, no, it's definitely going to be that coffee. Very nice. I'm very curious to see how it's going to finish from this point going forward, but that first impression was actually quite positive. Really enjoyed this one. Let's go ahead and move on to cup number 2. Better. All right. So right here has got a fair bit of a savory aspect to it. I don't necessarily think it's going to be that Kenyan coffee because it's not bright enough to be that Kenyan coffee, but there's a fair bit of savory aspects to it nonetheless. That immediately leads me to believing it's one of two coffees. It's either going to be that Honduran coffee or it's going to be the Colombian coffee. But as of this first try, there's definitely a favorite between these two, and it's that Kenyan coffee, what I assume is that Kenyan coffee. So let's go ahead and move on immediately to cup number 3. This one right here is probably the most muted of the 3 coffees we've had up to this point, and for that reason I'm going to place it in 3rd place for right now. It's going to be the other one, whichever one it wasn't the first time around. So if it wasn't the Colombian coffee or the Honduran coffee, then I feel like it's going to be this one right here, because I feel like one of these is the Colombian, one of these is the Honduran, and then this is the natural processed Kenyan. So let's go ahead and move on to cup number 4. And I completely spaced that there's also that Peruvian coffee, so it could be that one too. And I'm feeling that these 3 are going to be that mix of those 3. I'm just not entirely sure which one might be which. Honestly, this one's growing on me. And I think the sweetness that's kind of trailing at the end of this coffee is really appealing to me. I'm going to put it in 2nd place for right now. I'm really enjoying that coffee after it cools down a little bit. I'm wondering if maybe that's going to be the Peruvian coffee then, and these two are still the Colombian coffee as well as the Honduran coffee. All right. That means we've got two coffees left. One of them is the Panamanian Geisha, and one of them is going to be the Kenya. So I guess we'll find out right now which one this one is. And this one right here is the Kenya. And I know it's never going to be overly popular where I place one of Tim Wendleboe's Kenyan coffees because they are much loved coffees. But this one right here, I feel like in comparison isn't necessarily going to be my favorite. A lot of people know that I'm not the biggest fan of overly savory Kenyan coffees. That being said, I enjoyed it more than whatever this coffee was. And I think that I'm going to decide between these two which one I liked a little bit more. But yes, it's definitely going to be that Tim Wendleboe Kenyan coffee. It was instantly present right from the first sip. All right, that means this right here is the washed Panamanian Geisha. So this is exciting given that I know what it is, and this is going to be my first impression of this one. So I'm very excited for it. Yes, that's definitely going to be my favorite from this video. There's no second question about it whatsoever. That is an amazing coffee. It just tastes like that Coffea Circulor coffee. It's got that slight bergamot-like aspect to it, but in addition to that, it's got immense clarity. Definitely by far the cleanest coffee on this table. There's so much sweetness in this. There's so much depth in this. There's so much fruit in this. I fully expected this one to be a huge favorite in this video and everything going forward, and this one clearly knocked it out of the park. This right here is definitely going all the way up to number 1, and I'm 100% confident on this coffee, and I'm not even going to take any additional chances or second try. I'm going to go ahead and just place this one in that number 1 spot, and I'm going to go ahead and place that coffee, which was number 13. Right there. Oh, it's also my favorite color, blue. First place without question, and that one's going to be a powerhouse going into the final video. All right, so for the time being, I put their Kenya actually at second spot. I'm 100% confident it's that Kenyan coffee. I don't want it to come off as bias. I'm just trying all these coffees blindly, so I think that that gives me some favoritism in terms of against any bias, because I just think that these two coffees are significantly better than everything else I have here on this table. This one right here I said was the Kenyan coffee, which would make it number 18. And I would not be surprised if both of these made it to the final, as I can imagine that this one right here is going to be that wild card. Let me try these two one more time, because I think that I said this one was the Kenya. And it's definitely the Kenya. And I want to see how it compared to this coffee right here. If anything, it just has a little bit more to it. So I'm going to move this one up here for right now. Maybe not necessarily. This coffee is also growing on me. You know, let me try this one more time actually. I knew this was a little bit of a stacked video because none of the coffees on this table are bad, and that's saying something, because some of the ones we've had from the other videos I haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of, but even these coffees, I think this is my least favorite, but this one I don't mind. It probably would have placed higher in some of the other videos. Probably not necessarily my favorite though. I'm not sure. I think, honestly, I'm going to switch these ones around. And I'm 100% positive on this one that it's the Kenyan coffee from Tim Wendleboe, which makes it 16. 16. And that means I need to decide between these three, which one is the Colombian, which one is the Honduran, and which one is the Peruvian coffee. And I knew that was going to be the only real test in this video going into it, because I was going to be able to pick these three out pretty easily. I think, let me try these one more quick time. I'm leaning towards this one maybe being the Peruvian coffee. I think it is. And the main reason for that is that it is a Geisha, and it does have a little bit more sweetness to it and some really nice clarity. So I'm leaning towards this one being the Peruvian coffee, which would make it a 17. And that leaves these two. I'm probably leaning towards that one being maybe the... I'm not entirely sure. One of them is obviously the Colombian in my impression, and one of them is the Honduran coffee. I think, given that there's a little bit more savoriness towards the final one, I'm going to say that that's the Honduran coffee. And I'm going to say that this one right here then is the Colombian coffee. All right, I'm only confident on 3 of them, but I'm very confident on those 3. Let's see how we did on the rest. So this one right here I said was the Honduran coffee, so it should say 15. All right, we're off to a very good start. That means that at worst 4 out of 6 in this video, but as I mentioned, narrowed it down mostly because of the savory aspects that are present within this one. Even then, it has its own charm to it. I would say that this one's probably going to place 3rd place or higher in maybe some of the other videos. So very nice coffee, very stacked video. Let's move on. This one right here I said was the Colombian coffee, so it should say number 14. All right, now I'm 100% confident on this video too. I thought that this was going to be the easiest video going into it, if I'm being completely honest. Kind of surprised by the brightness of this one. I guess that's the Langøra Kaffe, isn't it? Yeah, it is. So maybe I shouldn't be too surprised, but a fair bit of brightness that was present within it. It just didn't have the same level of brightness and savoriness that the Tim Wendleboe coffee has. And it'd be hilarious if I happened to get this one wrong, but I'm 100% confident. This one should say day 16. Yeah. Tim Wendleboe has so many iconic, bright Kenyan coffees with so many of those savory aspects. There's a lot of niceness to this one. If anything, it was probably the biggest underdog going into this video, so it not placing last is going to be a good thing. I'm really hoping to get one of Tim Wendleboe's other coffees, maybe something other than his Kenyan coffees, because I do tend to like his coffees. I appreciated this one right here. It has some really nice sweetness to it, so that's why it charted and placed the way it did. This one right here I said was the Peruvian Geisha, so it should say number 17, and I'm 100% confident on this one. Yes. And as I mentioned, we do have 2 wild cards that could make it into the final video, and if I'm being completely honest, these 2 coffees would be my wild cards. I think that they're better than any 2nd place finisher from our first 2 videos up to this point. This coffee is really nice. I really appreciate the sweetness and clarity from this one. The only reason it didn't place higher is because these 2 coffees are just wildly impressive. So really nice job on this one. This one's from Jacu. I like a lot of Jacu's wash processed coffees, so massive credit to them on this one. This right here should say day 18 for the Kenyan. Wouldn't it be hilarious if I got the Kenyan and the Panamanian flipped, but I'm confident that I didn't. Number 18. This coffee is ridiculous, and it's not quite as ridiculous as last year's Kenyan coffee that they had. It's much more toned back. That coffee last year just reminded me of a ridiculously wild IPA coffee. Such strong citric components to it. This is very clean though. I have to say, for a natural processed coffee, well, the even more than natural processed coffee, it's really, really nice. And I would be pretty interested to review an entire cup, but if I'm entire bag, if I'm being honest, I would probably have a little bit of difficulty getting through the entire bag. But for a singular cup, that is wild. That is really impressive. And to nobody's surprise, our 1st place finisher was number 13, which is the washed Panamanian Geisha. And I think maybe the best thing for this one is if it was compared alongside some coffees of equal quality, because I mean, it's going to be the highest quality coffee on this table to begin with. Definitely had an unfair disadvantage, and it was always going to be such a huge favorite. That one's going to be the one to watch in that final video, as I can imagine that that's probably going to end up winning. As far as it compares to some of the other Panamanian Geishas I've had from Coffea Circulor, I wouldn't necessarily say it's even the best, but it's still a very nice cup of coffee. I would love to review a full bag of that, but I would also love to review a full bag of any Panamanian Geisha. All right, 6 for 6 in this video, though this one was significantly easier than the first 2, and I'm recording this one before I even know what the final coffees released for the final video are going to be. So I'm curious, as I think we're supposed to have one more Geisha in this video, but this one's going on to our final, and I imagine that this one at the very least is going to go on to our final, if not this one as well. But this has been the most impressive set of coffees we've had up to this point in this series. So I'm going to leave this at that. If you guys are enjoying this blind taste test ranking series, give this video a like. As I always say, they take the most amount of time to do, but they are definitely the most enjoyable videos to make. If you enjoyed the content in general, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been part 3 of our 2023 KaffeBox Advent Calendar Blind Taste Test Ranking Series. Thank you for watching.